Introduce everyone to Paul, who is a volunteer cleaner at the Cube. This is a role that has previously been paid, but in line with the parity in terms of operational importance, in addition to the general value of volunteering across the board, Paul kindly agreed to take on the role as a volunteer. Hi, Paul. We now have two presentations. I'd like to introduce you to our first presenter, Polly Pocket. Polly, thank you for your time this evening. I must inform you that your time will be strictly regulated. There will be a maximum of 7 minutes for your talk and then 3 minutes for your questioning. I will let you know when 30 seconds are left to go before the end of your talk with this sound. And when 7 minutes is up, I will make this sound and then open questions to the floor. So, Polly, your time starts now.
Okay, I'm going to be using this screen, so if you can make sure you can see the screen, that would be great. Okay, so I'm Polly. I was front of house manager at the Cube from May 2006 until my retirement, which occurred over a period of 6 months to May 2007. I'm going to talk about staffing. The Cube is entirely run, as you've just heard, by volunteers. Each night we need a front of house manager, an usher, 2 bar staff, a membership assistant, a projectionist if it's a film, and if it's a music night we also need a sound technician and an events manager. One of these people also needs to have keys to access the building. We have been known to open with only 1 or 2 of the roles present, but that's not ideal. We have 168 volunteers on our database, which seems like an awful lot. So filling roles ought to be easy, but I just want to show you the rota. So this week, okay, first start, you're probably not used to the messiness of the rota if you don't work here, but as you can see, we're okay for tonight, closing the Cube guided tour. We're okay for tomorrow night, that's okay. We don't have a video documenter, but that's not really a strictly necessary role. Thursday night, however, at present we can't open. We don't have an event manager, key holder, bar manager. So what I'm going to do...
I'm event managing.
Oh, you're event managing? Oh, okay. I was just about to phone someone and find out if they could do it, but that's cool. Okay.
John Stevens.
So I'm just going to write down John as event manager. You don't have keys though, do you, John?
No.
Okay. So I could try and find a key holder maybe.
I can do it.
You can do it. Oh. Can you also manage?
I'm already done front of house.
Oh. Oh yeah, you are.
Is there any other business while we're here?
No, that's fine. Okay. Well, I was going to make a phone call, but I'm not anymore because these people have just kindly.
We've got to make a phone call about another night. We've got to need staff on another night.
Okay. Friend of house on Friday night then. Front of house is a pretty difficult role to fill because you don't actually get to see the film or the music event if you're front of house because you have to be responsible for the security of the building. So there's quite often a gap next to the front of house name. Quite a lot of the front of house staff are here tonight actually, so but I don't hear anyone volunteering. I don't really know who to call, to be honest with you. I can't really think of anyone who would do it, and I don't want to waste all my 7 minutes. So maybe I'll do it. No. So maybe I'll leave that until after, if I've got time for question times. Who?
Belinda.
Oh yeah.
Joe Noble.
But I'll call them later because I don't want to waste my time. Okay. So although we have oh, and also I'll just show you the rota for next week as well, which is pretty funny. Yeah, that's going to need some filling. Right, so although we have 168 volunteers on our database, a quick survey that I took of a random 6-week period earlier this year showed that 81 people volunteered during this period. Actually, I thought this was pretty high. I thought that actually we were run by about 40 people, but it turns out it's 81. And of these 81 people, 33 of them volunteered just once in that 6-week period. And the most that somebody volunteered was 10 times, so that's just under twice a week. The reason for this is that as people don't get paid for the work they do at the Cube, they need paid work as well, and most of our volunteers have full-time jobs, although some claim job seekers benefit or have part-time jobs or whatever. The fact that many people volunteer infrequently means that a large volunteer workforce is needed. We have a huge number of volunteers, as you can see, and a large amount of diversity in that number. People from all over the world come to volunteer at the Cube, and for many it is their first port of call when they arrive in Bristol. The discrepancy between the number of volunteers on the database, 168, and the number of volunteers on the rota for that 6-week period, 81, can be explained by 2 factors. The volunteers who appear on the rota do the evening work of the Cube. They are the volunteers visible to the public who sell your drinks and your tickets. As a business, the Cube also needs a huge amount of work done behind the scenes, such as stocking the bar, answering the phone, bookkeeping, maintenance of the building, etc. And these are done by a largely invisible volunteer workforce. Secondly, there are some people on the Cube database who may not have worked for a few months or even a year, but we want to be able to get in touch with them. We want their details stored in an easy to access place, and so we keep them on the volunteers database for more sentimental reasons perhaps, and also a certain amount of administrative laziness. We do not currently have contracts for our volunteers, or even volunteer agreements. This means that any obligation to work at the Cube is almost entirely self-generated. Volunteers need to create their own sense of duty. We create our own structures which oblige us to work here. These structures may include a hyperactive sense of guilt or duty, the need to fill a CV, or even being attracted to forming a friendship with, or being in a relationship with, another volunteer. Volunteering is necessarily unpaid in financial terms, and in a city like this, it can be easy to draw parallels with slavery. Volunteers, of course, create their own chains and shackles, and the more self-motivated the individual, the stronger the shackles that they forge for themselves. This comparison is, of course, wholly inappropriate for many reasons, not least because volunteers at the Cube are remunerated in other ways. We are entitled to cheap drinks, free tickets, the use of the building, networking, and more importantly, most volunteers form lasting friendships, relationships, and gain a sense of community from working at the Cube, which is, after all, a cooperative. I see the Cube as a sort of social experiment. It is a melting pot of all sorts of creative, talented people, from musicians to artists to filmmakers, and the number of ventures that have in some way arisen from the Cube are testament to this. QU Junctions, Ben Festival, Blackout Arts, Underscore, to name just a few. Of course, not everybody who works here is an artist, but people may go on to produce art or music from working at the Cube, or just try something different. That's the end of my presentation anyway.
Okay, I'm going to be touching on some of the things that Polly's been talking about, but today, this evening, I'm going to be talking about the words multitasking and what that means in the Cube. So, inside and outside, I'm going to also read it from a script, so you have to apologise. I'm going to apologise for that first of all, but I'm going to do it anyhow. So, I'm going to be talking about multitasking, which is something that Polly was talking about quite a lot in her amazing talk just then. Okay, so inside and outside of this Cube, a multitude of people are cubes to volunteers now and forever, past and present. Before I joined the Cube, I had previously been employed in a monotonous administrative office job in London. At the time, it was the dawn of the domestic use of the internet, and though I used this office for plenty of extra curricular activity, mostly speaking to PRs to arrange interviews in the postal system, photocopiers for flyers and events and fanzine production. Although it was kind of tolerated, this extracurricular activity, it was secretly frowned upon, I'm sure. And in fact, if they ever knew the full extent of my activity in that office, I'm sure I would have been out that door immediately. Eventually, I was shoved out of that door. Left that door. And I moved to Bristol, where I joined the Cube. I was in a vulnerable vulnerable position in a new city, on the dole, to concentrate on my artistic career and looking for something to be involved in. One of the qualities I admire in my father is that although he doesn't have the best job in the world, he's extremely parochial and gets himself involved in all sorts of social and hobby activities. Just because they are his out-of-work activities, it still means he has to multitask them into his life, and a lot of the time he has to juggle this stuff around so he can do everything he wants to do. The Cube gets good value out of its irreverent multitaskers. Most of its busy bees are prepared to do almost anything for it. To prove a point, I will demonstrate how my journey went through the Cube and the variety of roles I chose to undertake. Usher, bar person, cleaner, glass disposer, DJ, programme illustrator, event programmer, front of house, minute taker, poster designer, poster photocopier, Cube admin contributor, programme distributor, curator, key holder, banker, performer, crisis disaster management team, staff manager, stock purchaser, insurance buyer, fundraiser, director, community garden overseer, t-shirt designer, photographer, website designer, Cube mentor, financial loaner, press and publicity, party organiser, cook, Cube ambassador, gig promoter, hospitality, debtor chaser, festival organiser, publisher, organisation developer again, Cube log instigator and contributor. If you now look at the handouts and see how my roles are described in the leaflet that you've been given, you'll see that they actually are wildly different from how they're described, which is something that I always am always confused about when people ask, and I'm sure every volunteer that works at the Cube will find this, when they're asked what is their role at the Cube, I never actually know what to say. I never did know what to say, I never do know what to say, because I think it's a confusing one for everyone, if you know what I mean. Now, I'm not claiming to be brilliant at all these roles. Some worked and some didn't. But the point is that I've always wanted to try hard for the Cube. And it was always a pleasure coming to this world of the Cube, where you can collaborate with other volunteers or the audience, really to make this your own world. I was always up for a new challenge. And the Cube tried as hard, and at the Cube, and tried as hard as possible. And trying is what the Cube is made for. But every person has a different set of roles and tasks to do and give, but what the Cube gave me and still gives me is safety in the knowledge that it's okay to be somewhere in between professional and unprofessional. For me, that is being an artist, for others an enthusiast. Now, there are some for and against for multitasking, and sometimes multitasking is all too necessary. As we're in the world of the creative and or independent freelancer, it means that it pays to be a multitasker. Not to say it doesn't pay to be a multitasker in big business, because it does pay, but at the Cube it can pay too. A lot of long-standing volunteers have day jobs, which is what something Polly was talking about. Perhaps they do the Cube in the evening, because like most volunteers too, the Cube is their dream job, and most of the time dream jobs are jobs that you do for the love of it, that don't come with a pay packet. Being able to multitask at the Cube is a necessity. How many times at the Cube do we find ourselves with skeletal staff, which is something that Polly was also talking about, and maybe have to do the bar, DJ, and do front of house at the same time, or say bar, projection, or just any mixed up variety of roles. Sure, if you can dream up a dream event cinema concert set while washing the Cube tea towels, listening to the radio and making dinner at home, brilliant. It would be unfair for me to mention a specific case of extraordinary brilliant multitasking, because it's my bet that every volunteer who has done anything in the building, and that was before it was the Cube, when it was built by volunteers in the 1960s, has always done multitasking. It is my bet that every volunteer in the Cube and every volunteer anywhere has had to learn to multitask. That's the ends.
It's been through many changes. The interior construction work, as with the bar and the lounge, having been done also by volunteers and funded by the Cube. In its deep and dark past, it's also been an illicit bar space. It's also the nerve centre of the Cube as defined by the computer system, which you'll be hearing about shortly. But right now I'd like to introduce you to our next presenter. Presenters Chiz and Kari. Chiz and Kari, as you know, your time will be regulated to 7 minutes of talking, 3 minutes of questions.
The reason I'm behind this desk, this is where we do our banking. So both Chiz and I are involved in the banking at the Cube. I've been involved in the Cube for the last, since the beginning actually, one of the oldest volunteers, and been through lots of different roles. And I was the front of house manager for many, many years, and then in 2006, Polly took over from me. I had a little son, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? I've been involved, doing a lot of evening shifts, and okay, I thought I might be able to do some banking. So I got a prop here. Normally when I'm here and working, I have my little son in that seat. It's very manageable, and looking through a lot of these sheets. So I'm going to send this around. This is our night sheets, which Polly already touched a bit on, and which Ray, which is sitting there, actually looking through them at the moment, checking that the money fits the information on the sheets.
He does our banking.
He does our banking too. So I pay the bill basically. I will liaise with Shreen, who's our accountant, no, our bookkeeper, sorry, and I'll be the one who then week by week pay the bills. And Chiz was the one doing the role before me. So if I just send this around, we can have a look at some night sheets that are good, some not so good, some do done, and varies.
The night sheets should be hopefully pretty self-explanatory. They've got the income that we received on the night, and it will indicate the cost of the night if we're paying artists or people or hirers that are there at the time. You won't see it if we're paying films or artists that are not here at the time, because that will be done through another transaction. The night sheets are quite a social occasion too, because after the night's done, we'll open them up and people gather round or not and say, how well have we done? They'll look, they can quite clearly see how well the bar's done, or how well we've done in front of house, how we've done with membership, and that is a great access point in terms of like getting involved in the Cube finances, and finances normally are not the most exciting of subjects, and why people become involved here. No one comes to work in the finances, they're normally drawn into it. And that simplicity is kind of is great, and that's kind of a beautiful thing that allows people to get excited and have their own say about what they think of the financial situation of the Cube. The VAT man once came round here and we got investigated, and he was here about 3 hours, and you could show him everything and quite clearly say, there we go, that's how much we spent on the bar, we made 100% markup, that's our income from the bar. And he kind of looked at everything and said, yeah, great, and walked away. And that was, I thought, a great moment, because normally the VAT man puts the fear of God into most people, and normally he's here for hours, days, weeks, investigations, you know, etc., etc. But that was simple. It's not a puzzle really. It's not like I'd imagine most businesses, like income is like really complicated and you don't want to get involved. I got involved because the simplicity of it allowed me to judge how well the program's doing. So at the time I was helping programming it, and then you could see what was doing well and what wasn't doing well, and then change the program accordingly. Not to say that if it's not doing well you shouldn't stick with it, but you see maybe we'd raise the price and charge people more, maybe we lower the price and encourage more people to come in, and that allows everyone to be involved in financial decisions at the Cube, and that's kind of a great thing, really. What else to say? Yeah, go for that.
So in terms of revenue, the Cube has got 4 main income streams. We've got bar, film, events and private hire. And we also got a nominal fee from our membership, which some of you, not all of you, paid on the door today. We don't already got a membership card.
And that's not VAT so
That's not good, that's right.
if people lose their cards, they have to pay again, so it's a way of supporting the Cube too.
And we always aim to trade with small businesses like ourselves. For example, we trade with Southwest Drinks, Bristol Cider Works, The Hair Shop and Cafe Kino, Simply Flicks, Jam Jar, and also obviously Kate and Fair Trade.
What else to say? At the moment, as an overview of the Cube financial situation, did someone get that? We are doing well in terms of events, music, cabaret, arts and private hires, which rely on more during the summer when audiences numbers are down. We're not doing so well on films and haven't done probably since like the inception of the Cube, and that's kind of strange considering we are a cinema. But we use that as a kind of foundation, as an identity, and that's what's important to it, as well as the films themselves reflect and kind of alter the way we program other things. So sometimes they're in conjunction with films, etc. So that's why we don't see it as a bad thing, even though we're losing money. Some events kind of lose money constantly, but we stick with them because they form very much an identity from the Cube. And then other things will, all we need is like 1 or 2 good nights a week where we're earning about £1,000 profit on each night, and that will fund the rest of what the Cube does on a weekly basis.
1 minute.
I'd like to say that we don't rely on other people's money for operations. We don't rely on funding, which is one of our strongest assets, I'd say.
And makes it really easy in terms of when you're looking at the finances.
We do have application for grants, but that's mainly for specific projects, which is generally on the fringes of what the Cube does. And we also have had 2 loans from local funders that went for investment for cinema screens and sound system. And next year we will be debt free. So that's going to be very exciting. It's the first time ever that we are actually financially independent.
Solvent.
Yeah, that's right.
We pay £13,000 for our insurance too, which is just scandalous.
It's 11,000?
11,000 is it? Oh yeah, you got it down.
Maybe just mention that also that's just under the rent amount as well, isn't it?
Yeah, our rent
That's right.
pretty much balances what we pay in insurance.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you actually before you ask the question.
Okay, you can ask that in the formal question time.
Does anyone else here like have a public venue where it used to have smoking, and if now you don't have smoking, whether that lowers your insurance?
That's a reason. Because of the lack of fire hazard.
Yeah.
When we went down, it was
came from the Chinese restaurant.
Kevin, do you know about that?
No, but except it's going to apply across the board, isn't it? Because all venues now are going to be smoke-free. So I would have thought it. I can't imagine there's going to be a drop in premiums across the board.
No.
Would be nice, but
Because the reason why it got hiked up was because there was a fire, not here, but in a restaurant which was down the corridor, and that was a fire hazard. And I'm sure that was a big reason why it got hiked up. So I'm sure if we don't have smoking, I'm sure it would go down. So this building is mainly wood. I mean, the theatre was built in wood. So.
Evening. I'm going to talk about two things this evening. I perform two main roles here. One is head of security. As far as I know, there's no other security workers in the Cube officially. And the other is the head of the systems. I don't do very much on the systems apart from preventing the other systems analysts from fighting. So I'll start off with the computer systems. As you can see, we've got some computers in here. When I came here 8 years ago, there was one laptop and a dial-up connection. And after some coercion from Hoggy, we decided to get some more computers and use Linux. Almost all our computers here are Linux, so except for this one, the accounts computer, which doesn't get used anyway. Early on in our kind of systems development, we decided we needed a server, and we started this one here. All the computers here are misspelled birds, so this is Sparrow, this is Eagle. This is our file server, just keeps general office stuff. Sparrow is its own server in its own right, has its own bank account, and how many users does it have, Kate?
About 40, I think.
Kate's the systems administrator for Sparrow, along with Marcus. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
We are connected to the outside world here by Bristol Wireless. We've gone through a succession of dodgy DSL contracts and finally decided or found an organisation that was dodgy but also ethical.
Just like the Cube.
Yeah. Okay, one of my roles as a systems analyst here has been to develop software tools. The first one that I coded up was, I think it was a contact database, which doesn't get used anymore as far as I'm aware. And then I introduced a system called the Scratchpad, which was, some of you may know the term wiki. It was pre-wiki, so it was the Cube invented wiki basically, and if we'd got our acts together a bit better, we would have spread it further and wider. But the Cube was run up. Do you want to pull up the Scratchpad? Hobbs post Scratchpad generation, but it was a way
ideas on the ideas.
Yeah, that's similar. Yeah, it was a way to share text on a web interface. It was always one of my intentions to make the systems here more open and democratic to all the workers, and the computer systems were a way of doing this, but unfortunately it's meant that people can now work at home and basically wasting or the opportunity or the value of the building during the day. There was a time when you'd have 10 people squeezed in here in the daytime, and it's rare to see 1 or 2 people here now. They're enjoying the comfort of their own homes. Also, we're a membership organisation. No one's quite sure what kind of membership organisation. Even if we ask Hoggy, he doesn't seem to know. Or is it because we're an illegal bar, or we show porn films, or we don't know? Do you know why we're a membership?
Porn films.
I think originally it was done because it was when we applied for a liquor licence. We applied for it as a patrons-only bar. It's a patrons-only liquor licence, like you get in a theatre. So
but we don't have to be a membership organisation anymore, do we?
Well, a patron is a member, has to be a member. Okay. It's not like a members' drinking club, like a private club. It's just patrons-only.
Okay, thank you.
We are allowed to show whatever, also that was allowed.
Yeah. Let's just show uncertified building.
Okay. So we have a database of all our members, and we exploit this data to great effect every week, and send out several thousand, I think about 6,000 emails of the upcoming events of the week. One of
Not so to be like one each.
what's that? Sorry.
One email each rather than 6.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But we have been policed by the university for spamming, unfortunately. Another tool that I was involved in the development of is, as you can see, Hoggy is currently modelling it. Is the diary. He's just switched over to his email, I think, though. And this is a piece of groupware that enables all of us to enter programming information and consult what's going on and who's paying for it and such like. This is with many of these systems, they create as many problems as they solve. For instance, as I mentioned, the fact that the building's not used very much now, but often there's holes in the operations due to dissolved responsibility. The diary has created a few problems like that. Anyway, this all kind of gets mixed up. All the databases are linked. Okay, that's enough on systems. I'll talk a bit more about security. How long have I got?
1 minute.
Okay, one of my roles as head of security here is to secure the building, make sure there's obviously the physical security and also the security of the staff, and also I kind of am involved with the development, long-term development of the Cube. In terms of security, I've interest in, for instance, the encroachment of development in the area and other arts organisations. For instance, you might have heard of the People's Republic of Stokes-Croft. They're currently trying to assimilate the Cube into their empire. So we have to repulse them and other organisations, as well as people, from the homeless hostel and general development. So we have to be very strategic about and aware of our impulse to improve the neighbourhood. In fact, it's in our interest for the neighbourhood to remain a bit sketchy. Okay, that'd be enough, I think.
Okay, any questions for Heath?
Why are you opposing the People's Republic of Stokes-Croft?
Because have you noticed that we're within their zone now? They've extended
We're
their...
Kingston.
Well, the good thing about the Cube is this area has no name.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very mixed economy. So you have basically there's a factory on this wall, there's flats on that wall, there's flats there, and there's a big push just to make this area into a gentrified residential area. And at the moment there's this whole kind of bid or incentive to make the Stokes-Croft the cultural centre or the alternative cultural centre of Bristol, which will obviously raise our rent and potentially put us out of business. So it's, as I said before, we have to resist any of those kind of improvements to the area. Which studios? Jamaica Street. Oh yeah, okay.
DHS.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So is that part of the same?
No,
Well, that's-
part of the same development.
Yes, it's in the middle of Stokes-Croft.
Any more questions for Heath? Okay, thanks very much, Heath Bunting. The staff of Hopkinson. This leads down into the office where we were just standing. Holes were resawn in the plaster, and these were used as points of entry for two astronauts.
Also used the fly loft in that performance.
Sorry?
Also used the
Oh yes, in your previous performance, the fly loft was also used by, not by astronauts, or was it?
No.
No.
Businessmen.
Mystery.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
And very quickly realised that a lot of it was, the job was very tedious, shopping for snacks and drinks. And my vocabulary expanded when I arrived at the Cube, and I learned to understand the words DIY, which in Australia means home improvements, and the whole tradition of DIY in here. And I also learned the word cash and carry, and spent a lot of time there. So a lot of the challenge of doing the bar, and Kale and I co-managed the bar till about a year ago, I think, when Ben Motz, who was here somewhere, took over. So a lot of the challenge was making it interesting and really trying to turn the same level of attention that the programmers do to the public program to the stock of the bar. And that, of course, extended to the supplier relations. And for myself being a Cube supplier, that was interesting. And it was possible also, as the Cube, to form these really interesting and strong alliances across seemingly uncrossable political abysses, such as, to mention one bar out in Cake. And Cake was introduced back in 2002 or 3 or something. And this we buy from the Women's Institute at the farmers market on Wednesdays, and the Women's Institute make the best cakes. And they're kind of like, and they're not actually even the Women's Institute, because it's illegal for them to trade as the Women's Institute because it's a charity, so they're country markets, and they make it very clear that they're country markets. And they get up at like 5 AM or something in Nailsea on Wednesday mornings, and they've collected up all the cakes the night before, so Tuesdays they're all baking, and the carrot cake, which is particularly good, it's always exactly the same. It's like it came out of a photocopier. So there's, their cake baking techniques are very fine. And they collect up all the cakes, and then on Wednesday they get up early and they drive to the market and they label them up, and they've got the labels with the makers' names and nut warnings, and it's extremely professional operation, and they're all volunteers, and they raise the monies to develop their own social events. So there's sort of an uncanny similarity with the Cube, and this is sort of just another kind of anarchist, self-organised organisation that we're really proud to have links with. So the bar suppliers enable us to have these social relations outside our immediate territory of kind of cultural peers. Playing around with the bar stock, there are some formal constraints, like you've got to have 100% markup or we won't make our money to survive as the Cube. And the bar take is something, is it 50% of the takings of the Cube?
55 I think.
So it's quite important. And there's another rule, which is you've got to have beer. I had this idea that, okay, we're going to have a bar, it'll just be spirits. The beer, it's such a pain, you've got to load it in, and then you've got to keep refrigerated, and then you've got to collect up the empty bottles, and then you load out the bottles. So there's just a lot of, glass in and out, in and out. But you've got to have beer. When I started here, there was 4 330ml lagers with the stock, and it was Stella, San Miguel, Beck's, and Peroni. And it seemed like a little bit of overkill. And then there were like peanuts and a few other things. And so one of the first sort of really potentially violent actions I took as bar manager was to get rid of all those beers. And it was actually Chiz who suggested that we stock Żywiec, which at the time, I'm pretty sure only the Polish club in Bristol was stocking. Now it's caught on and it's popular. But for me, it was a really interesting social experiment that can we make a beer, our popular beer, that has no brand recognition and that people can't pronounce the name. And to experiment with this on a, just random sample of the Bristol population. So you have grown men, like even now, coming up to the bar and saying like, can I have and we know at that point you just go to the fridge and get the beers. But, some of them bravely say Zywiec, or, everyone's got their own pet way of pronouncing it. But this worked. And this beer is now popular because I don't drink beer personally, but it's obviously like a, you know, it's a good beer. So this was, and I think pretty much all of our bar stock now, with a few notable exceptions like maybe Bath Ales and definitely Guinness, none of it has an advertising campaign in the UK. These are brands, but they're not brands that, you know, have billboards or television about them. So, and what I found I was really pleased about is that this hasn't phased our customer base at all, that people are very happy to, the customers are a lot more experimental or open-minded than you think. And then we took the non-branding or debranding experiment to its natural extreme by inventing our own cola, which is a project that Kayla and I do. And this is Cube Cola. And, you know, we're to show our kind of brand agnosticism, we use Tesco bottled water to bottle it, which really, really confuses the activists. But we make it ourselves from an open source recipe which we found on the internet, and from its raw source ingredients. That manufacturing process actually now goes on in the Cube Microplex, and I'm sure we're the only cinema in the UK that manufactures our own cola from source. Did you want to mention ginseng beer? Or do you want to do that later?
Well, it was the Menabrea. There was once an attempt to phase out Menabrea beer, which I think it's not around now.
It's phased out.
So, to much of my surprise, suddenly a protest group was formed and a petition was rounded up to try to...
That was ginseng beer.
Was it ginseng?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's ginseng.
ginseng.
The leader of the petition is
and we caved in to the desires of the protesters and continued to carry ginseng beer, which you can still make. Also, in terms of non-brand, I don't know who made this. I think it was a Cube volunteer.
It looks like Zuleika's work to me.
But I think this kind of small object is quite telling of the desires that we have as the bar, to have the Chrysalis brand, and it's tasty and out of stock.
Kale will be presenting a few more bar items a little later on in the show.
Okay, thanks very much, Kate and Kale.
A server in here once.
It was going to be used as a server,
but it actually didn't work out.
So
this is the coffee depot. So that's the amount of coffee that I need to shift at the moment. If you need to buy any for your office, you know where to come. And various assorted bar stock, and our vat tiles actually just
that's
been
the
moved
excess.
after a recent vat inspection. So we have that kind of dye here too. Hi.
At the time, 1998 this is, Bristol was simply bereft of events which showed more than one film at the same time. Multiples of anything looked good, especially on a proper cinema screen. The Microplex was a response to the absence of everything it did and does. Just as important is the way things are done. Typically, a volunteer exercises their vol, which is their will, to help. But we can see that enthusiasm emerges as a key characteristic in such an open environment. Perhaps I should remind you that an enthusiast has an extravagant religious emotion, and as well as being inspired, he or she is a visionary and possessed by God. However, the dictionary also says self-deluded person, or person. Anyone recognise themselves there? If Cube volunteers are self-deluded, then so are its audience. You frequently make the transition from the auditorium where you are to the stage where I am. This idea of the public making its own entertainment has always been central to my concerns with the way the programme develops and shapes itself. The stage is literally a home for people to experiment in, as it comes from the old French estage, which means a dwelling. To what extent the cube experiments with its material concerns perhaps rests on what degree it differentiates between the staged and presented and the embodied material of its own mechanism and apparatus. We needn't stop at the obvious notion of facility or use of tools. It could mean the organisation as a whole, how it advertises or addresses the public, or how it lays out its administration or office area, or any space for that matter. Now, my chosen definition of experimental is a project where no teleology is inferable, i.e. we never know what final cause or design serves the various developments that take place, or the view that for any creative undertaking to be experimental, it must essentially have no previously decided purpose. Like that slide. This brings me on to another layer of factor at play here, which is amateurism. By amateurism I mean a lover. There's once said of the cube, and I meant as a criticism, that it was run by amateurs for amateurs. You've already seen how enthusiasm can manifest once people are free to choose their roles, but I wonder if in fact the amateur is the enthusiast par excellence, and is enthusiasm an absolute prerequisite for the amateur? This missing slide could be seen as an act not befitting a professional, and the professional would maybe receive some kind of comeback. This isn't to say that the amateur is free to make mistakes willy-nilly. The difference between the inherent conduct of amateurs and the expected outcomes in professional environments is clear. Personally, I would like to believe that the cube strides towards a professional level of work, but essentially bungles its way. And it must bungle its way, because the enthusiasm for experimenting is so great, and true to the word bungle, it would fail to accomplish paid work or environment. In this is the double pincer of God as a lobster, the struggle to be professional and the resistance and rejection of professionalism. I suggest professional environments should strive to be amateur. In fact, it's common for people to be surprised when they learn that the cube is entirely volunteer and therefore amateur run. So great is the public's perception of the cube as professional. The play offered between these extremes, the unskilled amateur and the salaried professional, is represented by this light spilling everywhere, but done here deliberately. We can move slightly away from total chaos, and I'll illustrate this by the next slide, where we have at least a slide frame now, although the picture seems to have been forgotten. Notice the very slight restriction in light compared to the freedom of the non-existent frame. I mentioned the history of the building earlier. What we do know is that the main conversion from a derelict workshop to what we have now is undertaken in 1964 by a group of amateurs. Cube, in many ways then, is actually a continuation of the spirit of these times, an extension of the approach to perform one's tasks with love and as a lover of them.